Now we're going to move on to the smart workplace, and arguably we spend as much time, if not more, in the office than we do at home. And our next discussion will take an in-depth look into how technology and the Internet of Things is influencing the design and behaviour in our offices. We have our moderator for this as a panel session is Julian Blake. Julian is the editor of TechCityInsider, covering UK digital business. We also have Dr. Rao Mulpuri, who is the CEO of View Inc., which is a company who manufactures dynamic glass and intelligent window systems for buildings. He's responsible for the strategic direction and the financial and operational performance of the company. And prior to View Inc., he held several exec positions at Novellus Systems, most recently as president of Novellus Systems in Japan. And finally, rounding out the session is Ryan Anderson. He's a fantastic title, actually. He's the Director of Future Technology, no less, at Herman Miller, and responsible for developing and sharing the organization's research-based insights, point of view, roadmap, to improving the use of technology in the workplace. He's a core member of the Herman Miller team, and they work with the concept of the living office. And you should really check out their website. I have to say that when I think about my really dull accountant's office, we could do with someone like Ryan to jizz it up. So just to welcome Dr. Rao Mulpuri, Ryan Anderson, and Julian Blake to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Julian Blake. I'm the editor of TechCityInsider. I'm based in London, and we cover startups and founders, and we interview 100 great founders over the course of each year. And this year, above all, has seen the explosion of Internet of Things and connected device businesses in London. And I'm delighted to be joined by two innovators and pioneers from across the Atlantic today. To talk about how the workplace is being made smart. I'd like to come on to talk about what we mean by a smart workplace, but perhaps I could ask each of you by way of introduction just to give an overview of your business, and perhaps we could start with you, Rao. Rao's from View Incorporated, and his business is reinventing and making smart glass.
Yeah, happy to be here in at this conference. View, we manufacture dynamic glass. It's a combination of hardware and software. We heard about hardware a little while ago. We have deep material science. We use nanotechnology to make these very thin, 1 micron thick coatings. And we have big industrial operations to make this at large scale. But on the front end of the company, we are a very digital company. We have controllers that are electronically controllable. We have apps. We have software that connects with building management systems. So it's really a combination of hardware and software. And dynamic glass is an intelligent glass system. It's a smart skin to the building. It takes inputs from the location, the angle of the sun, the cloud cover, relative to each window pane in the building, and each window is independently IP addressable. And based on the location of the people in the building, it's able to automatically adjust the condition of the window so that you can control glare and heat, and you provide views and lights, no blinds, and a much smaller air conditioning system. The bigger benefit is not just energy and building systems. It's able to really allow the users to flourish in an environment where you have more natural light, where you have that connection to the outside, which have all shown to be hugely beneficial to people. Sounds obvious, sounds like it should already be done, and how come this hasn't already been done? It's extremely difficult on the material science end to get the films right, to be able to create perfect uniformity, large dimensions, and put it all together in a full system. And we are the first company to have done this in about 50 years of research and development in this space. So proud to be here and would love to talk more about that.
Okay, just to follow that up very briefly. So this is glass technology that is making buildings more energy efficient, but it's also making them better for the workers and more pleasant places to work in. Tell us about your biggest project so far.
Yeah, we are presently heavily focused in the commercial workspace. We are in office buildings, we're in hospitals, we are in hotels, we are in educational institutions, universities, and schools. Some of our larger projects, we are in a 1.5 million square foot, $1.5 billion hospital in Toronto called Humber River Hospital. About 50% of the windows in that complex are made by View. We are at CenturyLink's technology headquarters in Monroe, Louisiana. We're in a dozen or so installations in Silicon Valley. We're at SAP. We're at a number of hotels, W Hotel. We're at Hilton Universal. We're at a number of university settings. We're well over 100 projects, and this technology is now well underway to being at large commercial scale.
Great. Ryan, Herman Miller is best known for being a traditional office furniture designer, founded in 1923, I believe. And you guys have been working in that traditional space, and you've moved into a much more futuristic mode, and in some ways that is your remit. Tell us about your work.
Well, first and foremost, thanks everybody for spending some time with us. Yeah, Herman Miller, office furniture company, dates over 100 years old actually, and one of the largest furniture companies in the world. Within the tech community, probably the Aeron chair is probably our best known product. So for those of you that sit in Aeron, thank you. The company has a lot of first ergonomic chair, first kind of modular furniture products, and what we do really well is kind of rethinking workspace that includes offices, but also healthcare, higher education, to really make them more human-centered. We have been, of late, really focused on an initiative called Living Office, which is really meant to begin to make the workplace much more congruent with the ways that people work now, because a lot of the assumptions that most, particularly commercial offices, are based on are quite antiquated compared to the way we're working today. My team works within research and development. Our goal basically is to reimagine the workplace based on changes in emerging technology. A lot of that's related to how we work, the devices we use, the software we use, but certainly connectivity and ultimately this more connected Internet of Things trend is having a force within the office as well.
I've had the pleasure of sitting in both an Amos chair and an Eames chair, and very comfortable they are too.
Yeah, both from our history. Yeah.
Tell us about your latest projects, and particularly within your sphere.
Yeah, well, within research and development, I mean, basically we've been partnering with some of the world's best tech companies. I was telling Rao, while I live in Michigan, I feel like a part-time Californian, where we're basically looking at roadmaps for a variety of technologies, unified communications, all sorts of consumer technologies, and asking, well, how will this change the way people work, and what does it mean to create a workplace experience that's prepared for these things? So, you know, workplace is a very static thing. When organizations go through these capital cycles, they invest to build spaces that last usually 10 or 15 years, the life of a lease. What our job really is in focusing on, if new technologies become very commonplace throughout that duration, we want to make sure the space is ready for it. We also work very closely with a variety of tech companies. It seems like the tech world is really leading the way in investing in great workspace. So we work closely with a lot of large tech companies that we'd all be familiar with to help them reinvent their own spaces.
Well, let's unpack what we mean by a smart workplace. And I think there's a broader definition which is about lifestyle and well-being and the kind of stuff we like that makes us feel better. But within the context of this event, I think we're talking first and foremost about a sort of smart, connected, adaptable, personal workspace. What does a smart workplace mean to you? And perhaps we could start with you, Rao.
Yeah, I mean, smart has to be about people, right? We can't just think of buildings as boxes that we stuff people in. I think clearly people at this conference get it in the type of spaces you must be in. Let me put that in context, right? When you think in our world of people selling products into buildings or building systems, the focus generally has been on energy and conservation of resources. The focus so far has been about recyclability, about energy efficiency. And our product and products like this provide a ton of that. We save about 20% of HVAC and lighting energy. We save about 25% of HVAC peak load. But I think if you think from the context of a workplace, let's put that in perspective. If you spend 1 unit of currency per unit area in a building, dollars, pounds, euros, whatever you want to do per square foot or meter, you spend 10 units of currency per unit area in rent. right? So energy to rent, you go 10x normally, roughly speaking, depending on the place in the world. And then from rent to people, salaries and benefits, you do another 10x. So contextually, the difference between energy to what you spend on people in a workspace is 100x, right? So if you're a business looking for outcomes, if you're looking for ROI, until now what's been considered soft benefits, which is how does better quality of air or natural light or connection to the outside impact productivity of the people, now you start to think about those as hard benefits, because it might help you recruit better people, it might help you retain the people you have, it might help you drive better productivity. So it's not productivity from an energy point of view, it's not just productivity from a space point of view, but it's productivity of the people. And there are lots of studies that show this, and I think you're seeing now a movement, especially aided by perhaps tight labor markets and that need for talent, to start to look for ways where you can create better and better spaces. So I think you're going to see products, services, systems that in many cases utilize all the smart things that we've done, be it connectivity, be it sensors, be it studies on biophilia and how things impact people's well-being. And I think we do have the ability today and looking forward to connect all of that together and create that science behind how do you create a better space.
Right. Do you agree with that smart workplaces are essentially about people?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think we should probably acknowledge smart workplace as a term is extremely emergent. I mean, we heard earlier, if you were in here, about kind of how smart home is still being defined. Smart office or smart workplace, even less probably defined in terms of what we mean by it. So I think even those of us that think about this stuff all day long are continuing to work towards a shared definition. Yes, certainly user-centered spaces are at the key of what's happening in terms of the transformation in offices today. If anybody happened to catch Sunny Vu's talk yesterday about how smart is kind of migrating from the personal into the contextual, environments of our home, it's migrating in a good way, probably from the building towards the user within office space. There are already systems that do a pretty good job of measuring, security and energy utilization, things of that nature. But for me, I think probably the most interesting thing that's kind of on the horizon is how additional information gathered from sensors are beginning to reshape the way these spaces are planned. So as an example, when we engage in a change management process with our customers, we'll often encourage them to pilot various approaches to very different offices to see what ones really serve the users. We can employ sensors and things of that nature to real-time measure utilization of these things and cross-reference it with ethnographic and other qualitative means of asking, okay, it's great you wanted to use this one more than this one, but why? And get it something that's a little bit more user-centered, a little bit more human. And where this is probably going is that the people who plan and really create office space, architects, interior designers, and the whole host of others in the ecosystem are slowly beginning to become data scientists. I mean, there's an art and a science to the creation of a workspace, but it's been probably more art than science, and we're beginning to see some new streams of information changing that, I think, in positive ways.
Right. So there's a whole kind of personalized spaces that are being created through the knowledge of this data, Internet of Things generating a lot of this data, that will help create spaces that work for the individual rather than groups of people.
Yeah, I think, in your home you might think of, your individual space or some aggregation of the people that are there. We are always battling with what the right thermostat setting should be in your bedroom or in your kitchen. I think likewise in an office space, I heard a definition recently that something like 80% acceptability is considered to be comfortable. Okay, what about those 20% of the people? But you can nuance this out in terms of 1 degree or not. But there are universally acceptable things that nobody likes or everyone likes. For example, everyone likes a view, right? I haven't had one person say, well, I hate that view, or I don't want to be next to a window. Everyone is challenged with, at some level or the other, glare and heat. Everyone would like a better ventilated environment. So I think there are universally acceptable things, and then you can look at the second order aspects of individualization. Where I think the sensors on the outside of the building, as well as smart things that are associated with people. For example, you can have light sensors, temperature sensors, things that look at cloud cover and so on the outside that tell you, what's going on. There are deterministic things. For example, the location and the angle of the sun relative to the earth, in fact, relative to each window in a building, is fixed, right? And it's going to be fixed for a long, long time. So you only need to look at variables, but you have a ton of information that's already out there on the web or in other locations that can be pulled in. Inside the building, you have people that might be carrying a phone in their pocket. So, just like Waze or other things are looking at traffic, you can look at who's there, how many people are in that room, how far away are they sitting from the window. And then if you look into the future, we know social aspects of our lives are continuing to change and evolve in how we live and how we work. I think one of the points Ryan was making is about flexibility. You want to create a space, given buildings last more than 50, 100 years, you want to create buildings that aren't static, that only serve the purpose of, or the needs in 2014, but you want to be looking at 2064 and, 2114, but really create spaces that can be easily changeable. So in our case, for example, the window can be reprogrammed, right? That used to be a conference room or a law office with walled offices, and suddenly a software startup moves in, and now you want to get rid of all the hard walls and turn it into an open space. You can reconfigure the window or reconfigure the hard aspects of the building by simply reprogramming from a software point of view.
Let's broaden this out a little bit from the tech and talk about a smart workplace, I guess, in a sort of more holistic way. I mean, the workspace is changing, and startup workplaces are changing perhaps faster than most because of the pressure with office rents. People are needing to be more flexible and creative with spaces, and people also want a cool place to work. What does the kind of broader definition of a smart workplace mean to both of you?
Yeah, well, I think desirability is probably a key factor. I think that's what a lot of the tech world's gotten right. I mean, for roughly 30 years, if an organization hired someone, they gave them a desktop computer, a desktop phone, a desk chair, and it was a pretty fixed kind of situation. End users had very little autonomy in terms of where and when they would work. There was something technological you needed at work, whether it was a printer or Wi-Fi or whatever. These days, it's totally different. Many of us can be technologically as productive at home or elsewhere as in an office. And so we tend to think of like workspace as being in competition with the richness of the urban landscape. I mean, people don't have to go to work. So to be smart, I think, absolutely needs to be user-centered. It needs to be a place where you feel like you can connect with others. We have an initiative that really takes a look at user experience design and applies a UX lens to work experience. So we look at kind of the physical, social, cognitive elements of what it really means to be in a space, trying to get at that notion of what creates a space that people love and what sort of spaces offer people enough choice to go and do a wide variety of activities. People tend to have very dynamic work processes throughout the day. And so when we start seeing spaces that really allow people a lot of choice, very desirable, and people go there because it's the best place for them to be, I think that, that's really smart. I think technology plays a huge role in it, but it's not the only part.
I think there are two aspects to it. One is health and well-being that probably applies very broadly to any setting or, frankly, any building environment. For example, if you expose people to more natural light, there are studies that show people sleep longer. Imagine if you could sleep an extra hour, and then what that does to your well-being, and for the business, what it does to the productivity of that business, because in this knowledge economy, those things matter far more than anything else. I think the social aspects, or business-specific aspects, have to do with creating spaces that are appropriate for that business. For most of us in these rooms, it's about collaborative work environments. The more disconnected we tend to be in our individual work, the more connected we need to be so that we can share ideas and drive kind of that innovation forward. So I think it's going to be about creating spaces that foster collaboration between coworkers and makes it easier for people to get their ideas across so that the business is able to move fundamentally much faster. And I think that aspect of it is going to evolve. It won't be static for the world as a whole or even for a given business. And that's going to be different depending on the type of business that you're in. But I think it's important from the aspect of devices, software, services that are being sold into those businesses, that those be flexible enough to accommodate that.
I was lucky enough earlier this summer to visit the new SoundCloud headquarters in Berlin, which is their new flagship building, and they've spent a lot of money on that space, and it's super connected, and they've spent a lot of money on audio, as you would imagine with a business like that. But one of the main reasons that they have invested like that is because they want to keep their staff, and they want to keep their staff happy. And I think that whole idea of staff retention is perhaps something that needs to be factored in here as well.
Yeah, and the good news is, I mean, we're seeing some really pioneering, interesting things. I happened to be at Plantronics headquarters a couple weeks ago. They're a great customer of ours. Done some amazing things as well. There's new fields of study that are making this much more rich. Rao mentioned biophilia. You know, biophilic design really looks at how the organic, things like circadian cycle and other things start to affect workplace. We've been doing some studies with someone in neuroeconomics to look at how ambient buzz, like a certain degree of energy, which kind of feels like a squishy concept, actually changes biological markers and can begin to look at how people behave differently in teams. And so there's some really, really rich areas that are beginning to inform this. And this has always been kind of viewed as the soft stuff. But in fact, like if it's all about having people really have a great work experience and want to be part of your organization, those translate into hard things pretty quickly.
Yeah, you know, I think something comes to mind. Yesterday we heard about smart transportation and how everything's going to be connected and driverless cars. And the term mentioned was Moore's Law of transportation. While I think it's very hard to move cement or steel or even glass at Moore's Law pace, I think the digital aspects of the workspace can certainly move at the Moore's Law pace in terms of data, aggregation of data, sensors, and really continually evolving that. And I think with devices, software, services, I think you're going to see that aspect of buildings change significantly in the next 5 to 10 years.
Great. Well, listen, I'd love to talk for longer. The smart buzzer is buzzing, so we're out of time. Rao and Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming over.
Appreciate it.